Tēnā rā koutou, te tuatei nei rā ngā mihi na whakaaro e kawia mai I a maua mātou no Aotearoa, New Terene, ki a koutou e tau nei huri noa. Kia ora koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā no tātou katoa. On behalf of Hazel and myself, I'd like to offer the warmest greetings from Aotearoa, New Zealand to you all. We expressly acknowledge the First Nations people of these lands, the people who've held sovereignty of these territories since time immemorial and still do, and under whose traditional authority we're all welcomed and meet. So we acknowledge them. We also acknowledge all of us who are here, all of you from your respective backgrounds and countries, and all of us have come together for a single purpose, a discussion of the issues of the day, obviously the hepatitis and the opportunity for its eradication, and acknowledge all of the work that all of you do. Obviously we're all inheritors of the efforts of those of our forebears before us, those who've worked to overcome the challenges of communities in their time, who've thrown all of their resources and abilities to solve the issues of the day and improve collective well-being, and it's our view that we, the current generation, share that same challenge, that same responsibility. So we've no better time than now, no greater opportunity to eradicate hepatitis. We're excited about that. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Hep C Action Aotearoa and my colleague Hazel. Kia ora mai.
Kia ora anaki, and thank you No Hep for the opportunity to come. I will probably mostly read because I've got a lot to say. I'm a law student and I am a survivor, and I bring with me thousands of voices and stories from hepsters all over the world. We have communities of support that save and transform lives. We have time and wisdom and kindness for each other. We endure and experience stigma, fatigue, hope, joy and fear. We hold in our hearts and minds those for whom the cures came too late, and those for whom it is there now but out of reach. My story and my thoughts on my own. But this is what I was told in September 2015, just before my first law exams. That treatment exists, there was none funded at all in New Zealand then, except more interferon, didn't need that. And my prescription I needed was 24 weeks soft DAC, would have been US 268. Not even selling my house, disinheriting my children would have covered it. Only days later, I was lucky enough to be sent a link. I saw a little wee blue link in the corner. I saw a story about Greg Jeffries, who had begun the generic movement on his own, and James Freeman. They stepped in, and I got my prescription, got cured. This is what I thought about when I first read about generics in the paper. A lot of people go through a really long process accepting that it's for real and that it means it applies to them, but I had no time. I was out of time. I thought, well, it's in the newspaper, there must be a sound basis to this story. It's backed by a doctor with a searchable reputation, and a good one. Not merely email contacts, but an actual street address that checks out and a local phone number. And they're Australian, I could track them down if need be, and then they'd be sorry. I think this is for real, and I'm in. And that took me about 20 minutes. Some people will take ages. And so I exercised my legal right to survive. And I imported DAAs, and this is my scan. I've had the same specialist for 20 years. He did my biopsy, and he oversaw interferon treatment, and he does my scans on his fairly new shear wave ultrasound, so I'm confident of the results. I'm a lot better. I've gone from I've gone from F4 to F1. One more. So, having got the generics, I felt better pretty much straight away. My illness came off me like a ton of bricks. It was an incredible feeling. And my head started to clear, and I started to think about how lucky I was. And so I felt a civic duty to do something for other people about it. I gave up my privacy. It wasn't easy, but I thought about my situation and I worked out there must be hundreds of people just in New Zealand who needed the information as urgently as I did. I gave up my privacy incrementally. I got used to it interview by interview. I've had no public profile in my life up till now, and I've never hidden my Hep C status, but publicly shouting about it was something else again. Opening up completely on Facebook was hard. I'd only just joined it. I didn't like it. I was paranoid about it. Went against the grain. At first it was New Zealand, but soon it was the world. So this is pretty much the story of my life since then. I've got a family, I've got other things to do too, but this is the kind of way I spend my life. Probably on the computer's more accurate than the phone. This is the kind of thing I've been doing. Particularly the media interviews is just a big list on the side, that's some of them. I've done government submissions, local access campaign, and a lot of political lobbying. New Zealand's nice and small, you can really get close to people if you try. I run an informal helpline and I've been busy with that. Particularly the first year or two, I had people, and I still do, I had people calling me all the time. For instance, after a media story, I'll always hear from somebody. In January 2016, one of my first interviews I did was live radio, and the next day I was contacted by a woman who'd been at the doctor's and told she had Hep C. She made it to her car crying, she turned on the radio, and she heard my interview. She went home, she looked it up, she joined, and ordered. So for 10 minutes from diagnosis to answer was pretty incredible considering the journey some of us have had. I get contacted by lots of people who heard or got hope from the news stories they've seen, like I did from Greg, and it makes me have to keep doing it. With wonderful timing for this conference, I've been doing this alone for two and a half years. Anake and his colleagues stepped in and wrapped around me and helped me set up Hep C Action Aotearoa in February 2018. And we've established ourselves to try and eliminate Hep C in Aotearoa by 2025, and we're a long way off it. And globally I reach out. Eyes tend to roll when I say I'm busy on social media, and I understand, I really do. I thought the same until very recently, but it has been such a powerful tool. I comment on prices, posts about medication pricing, trade, hepatitis, anything that comes past. I've been contacted, as I say, for instance, I was contacted by someone who followed up on a Toronto Star article I made a comment on, and she was a Russian Canadian, she fell between immigration rules for treatment, and she had encephaly. She was really sick, she was falling over. She got generics, and she's, like me, made a full recovery. And when I learned that this is the first time we've had a cure since penicillin for a top 5 infectious disease, and I think that then it was post-war when you only had telegrams and letters, but it was deployed really rapidly, everyone knew about it. I looked deeper into why DAAs have not been, and I'm not satisfied. I make comparisons, and it's not just me or a small minority of people who want to complain about it. I see a problem with what DAA access represents. Mainstream institutions are pointing to inequality issues all over the world and saying this is unsustainable. In New Zealand, we are waking up to the failed policies of deregulation and the effects that this has on inequality. Recently, former Prime Minister who held the power throughout the 90s and oversaw all the restructuring we had has recently said that neoliberalism has failed us, a complete turnaround. And our new government, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, who I'm hoping to hear has had a baby today, is saying that she is putting kindness back in government, and that's what we're beginning to see. Meanwhile, I keep studying, and full-time, and I see parallels in every class. And while studying, I learn much more about the legal background to why prices can be so high for something that costs less than $100 to make that so many people need to save their lives. And this drives me nuts, I have to say. There's research published that extinguishes any concern about the safety, efficacy, or legality of using generics from a trusted supplier. Bioequivalence is proven by the World Health Organization, but I can report from our forums that it's very widespread that doctors don't follow the science. Risk to themselves or risk to doctors is placed far ahead of patients, routinely in fact, and that risk is not assessed then against the realities. I've heard countless stories of people who have been thrown out of their provider or doctor's service just for asking about or getting generics. Some of them really ill, like myself, with no other choices, but no support. But no doctor has been penalised for prescribing generics anywhere, let alone monitoring. So what are they afraid of? I see parallels to other big problems, and I think, look at this. Political or ideological is not okay. I look at all this and I want to say, look, the gold rush is over. It has gone too far. Unregulated pricing of medication must end. We're here to talk about finding the missing, and it's really urgent, and about partnership of civil society with science. There's no point in finding them if we don't talk about funding them. I believe Hep C will not be eliminated without wide and rapid deployment of generics. And I see rising rates of HCV infection. We know we're coming here and things are actually getting worse in some respects. Treatments are dropping, in fact, halving worldwide in the past 3 quarters. Deaths are still occurring at shocking rates. My challenge to you here is to turn around and look at the elephant in the room. And the threat posed to citizens by uncontrolled medication pricing. There is corporate law, straight up business type law, and then there's law and society, a course I took, which examines the history of the corporation and its effects on society. The public-private debate is at the core of this academic analysis, and I learned a lot in this class. Traditional corporate theory and classical neoliberal economics holds that there's no need to regulate the corporation to secure good public outcomes like fair prices, because the invisible hand of the market, competition, will provide all the checks and controls. This is the final message on the poster I will present tomorrow. Every one of these 40,000 deaths per year from terrorism globally is an outrage, and it leaves grieving and shattered communities. Yet 400,000 deaths from Hepatitis C, largely preventable, for each of these same years is just business as usual. As far as the law goes, a legal response, regulation usually takes one of 2 types. There's classic carrot and stick, command and punish, and that is the kind of response that needs to be made to the crime of terrorism. Or there are ways of incentivising behaviour. So I'd like to say, do we want to do this the hard way or the easy way? Because change has to come. I made a submission about all this stuff back in 2016 to the New Zealand drug buying agency Pharmac. They summarised it as saying that one submitter objected to profiteering. I thought, well, I didn't say that, but I looked it up. And I looked up the definition and I thought, yes, I do, I object. But I haven't come all the way from New Zealand just to point out problems. I have the luxury of living in a place where there's almost no terrorist threats, and I want to acknowledge that here while I draw this comparison about numbers and responses. But I have ideas. This is a diagram from my law and society class, and it's the classic idea that by applying market forces on one side and a few rules on the other, prices, quality, consequences, etc. will all work out okay. The corporation is a black box, and what happens within that black box doesn't matter. Outcomes will work out. But that isn't working. It isn't working at all with medication pricing. We can't leave it like this. And it didn't used to be like this until about 30 or 40 years ago, when, like the Allen quote, we stopped being able to imagine a different paradigm. With DAAs, there is no real market forces due to patent monopolies, and regulation as it stands is ineffective as controlling the prices, as the arbitrage that goes on with multinational companies can just move between jurisdictions and get the best, legal deal, regulatory deal for whatever part of their operation they need it. We already have the legal tools of TRIPS Article 60 for personal importation of generics like I used. There's also TRIPS Article 30, which is a clinical trial exemption, and I really wish this was more widely used, and come to talk to me in the village if you're interested in that. It exists, and you are entitled to use generics for a clinical trial. But we need more to eliminate Hep C, sector-wide regulation or standards. It can be called anything, but I'm calling it, because I can, the JPP. This is how I see it working. Pharmaceutical patents get lumped in with other intellectual property like music, but these aren't like music. These are life-saving curative medicines, and we're protecting the wrong set of rights, and I think we need to right that wrong. This is where you all come in, because I really am an optimist. I choose to believe the best of people I meet everywhere, and I have to believe we come to these conferences year after year to make things better. But to do that, we can't keep ignoring this elephant in the room. If it is not broke, don't fix it, but it is. The system that brings us to this point, record-smashing returns on ROI while more and more die, that is a broken system, and it is not regulating itself. We are stakeholders, and we can affect what is inside that black box. We each have a sphere of influence, and we can use that influence to bring about change, no matter what part we have in it. Systemically, I'd like to see insurance companies only deal with those companies that have JPPs. I'd like doctors and researchers to be able to say, you want me to do some research for you? Sorry, you don't have a JPP. My professional insurance won't allow it. It would be bad for my reputation. I'd like corporate lawyers and policy advisors to rock up and say to the boss, look, we need to take this JPP stuff seriously. We could be attracting liability. We've seen a lot of powerful, seemingly bulletproof people held to account for wrongs lately, and now there's all this attention on our business model. There are more and more court cases, class actions, as more and more people say this just isn't right. I'd like to see stockbrokers start to say, my clients are refusing to invest in you because you don't have a JPP, and I have heard of this happening. Divestment is a real and present danger to this status quo. All in all, we need changes to medication pricing because it affects us. Hep C, DAAs represents that. It is a national and international threat. Let's respond to it creatively and with determination to truly eliminate and not talk about it, whilst withholding the tools to do it. But now I want to take the heat off. I want to acknowledge that price is the main, but not only, barrier to finding the missing and elimination. I can see from neighbouring Australia, who's had full access for 2 years, that there are still large numbers of people undiagnosed and untreated. This is the linkage to care gap, and it's a hot topic for this conference. Getting people tested, followed up, etc. Stigma is the killer. It's a barrier to every step in linkage to care. And this is where all those voices from the online forums can help. No Hep has the right idea, and I congratulate them for making the patient voice heard and making the sector aware that it must be heard. We are easily and often dismissed by the medical model. The idea behind this butterfly campaign is one of metamorphosis, rising free of Hep C as individuals, communities and countries. This is what it felt like, still feels like for me. And I feel it when I hear about people becoming undetected, getting their meds and achieving SVR. This poster highlights those kind of feelings, and I think we need that. Any campaign is about feelings. It needs to be more positive than a lot of the campaigns we've seen. What this does is accomplish two difficult things. It makes people want to have a test and even want it to be positive, because who wouldn't want to take a pill to feel as much better as I do? People have said to me, I will be disappointed if it's not Hep C that's making me feel this tired. So that tells me that it's accomplished a couple of big barriers. I have this poster, I have it as an e-file. It's available for anyone to use. You can take the branding off it very easily and put your own contacts on it. It's adaptable. The butterfly image is for Hep C, and I've taken it a bit too seriously, and it's adaptable to local test and treat messages. See, I've come a really long way because I really do want to help, and I want change, and I want Hep C eliminated from New Zealand and the world. Thank you.